Hello and happy holidays. Today's episode we're going to cover fresh whole ham. So we're basically going to get this underway. It's a slow cook. We're probably going to target around 220 to 250 degrees, and it's going to take probably about a half hour to 45 minutes per pound. So we'll cut over and look at the bill of materials. Okay, so what you're looking at here, we have a 19-pound fresh ham. It's whole cut, it's not pre-smoked. What you're seeing is what you get here. So basically it's going to be kind of a three-step process. What we're going to do is we're actually going to create an injection over here using this apple juice as well as a touch of the honey and maple syrup. We're going to use that injection needle to kind of poke it through there. We're just going to do one side of it, the side that you see facing up. And then from there, what we're actually going to do is we're going to rub it with the Hungry Jack and the honey that you're seeing there, just to give it a nice glaze. And then we're going to make our own dry rub. It's going to consist of dark brown sugar. It's going to have some nutmeg, some cinnamon, and some allspice, just really to kind of give it a nice sweet caramelized crust. So we're going to get underway. We'll start with the injection and we'll move forward from there. Alright, so for our injection, what we're actually going to do here, it's going to be mostly apple juice based, just because we need to make sure that it is thin enough that it's actually going to move through that needle into the meat. So we're going to do a healthy portion of apple juice here. It will be the main ingredient for this injection. And then we're going to come in here. We're going to add a healthy amount of honey, not too much, we don't want this to get too thick. That's probably good enough. We're going to add a little bit of this Hungry Jack, just to introduce that maple flavor. You'll have to bear with me as I haven't opened up this bottle yet. There we go. All right. We're going to do some of that. Okay. And then we're just going to do a dash of our seasonings that we're going to use in that rub. So we will add a little bit of cinnamon. It's more than enough. A little bit of nutmeg. That's good. And we're going to hit it with some of this allspice. More than enough. And then we are going to add some of this brown sugar. Not a ton, as I mentioned, but enough to kind of give it a hit of that sweetness. And that's good. So what we're going to do is we're going to heat this guy up in the microwave, and then we're going to give it a good stir until it's kind of more of a consistent injection. Alright, so a minute and a half later, it's all a consistent mix here, so we're just going to mix this guy up. It should just kind of be a cloudy, tannish brown. So if you smell it, it almost smells like an apple cider. Smells pretty good. A little hint of the cinnamon. The cinnamon's a little bit strong. You probably could have gone with a little bit less than I used, but it should all cook out fine. So yeah, we're going to basically inject the ham in numerous spots just on that top side, the side that's not flat, and that'll be the only injection point, so we'll just give it a healthy dosage. Alright, now we're going to make our dry rub. You'll see that it mostly consists of allspice cinnamon, as well as nutmeg and brown sugar. It will be largely brown sugar based, just because that's what's going to give it that real sweet caramelization. So we're going to put a healthy amount of this brown sugar in here. So we're going to go ahead and open this bag up a little bit more, kind of break it up as we put it down in there. And you're going to want a good bit just so that you can coat the whole ham. That's really going to, I mean, for one, it's going to lock in all that moisture, but as I mentioned, it's really also going to kind of candy it as well. So I'm going to go with about a little bit more than half that package. You'll have to bear with me here, as this brown sugar is not always easy to manage. That's okay, nothing wrong with getting your hands a little dirty. Alright, that should be good for a start. We can always come back in and make more. So then after that, we're going to come in and we're going to add our allspice. You're not going to go overboard with a lot of these other flavors we're putting in here. So just enough to kind of augment that flavor a little bit. So come in, add a little bit of this guy. It's good, just a few sprinkles. And then really the same for our nutmeg and cinnamon. Cinnamon, you really don't want to overpower your flavors too much. It's probably good. And as I mentioned, that's probably more than enough cinnamon. So really just going to kind of go in here, toss it around, try to break it up as much as you can. I know the brown sugar tends to clump, so it's not going to be perfect. You're probably going to have to pat it around, rub it around a little bit. But when you're finished, should smell real sweet, should smell like the holidays. So that's kind of what we're dealing with here. So we'll get started. We're going to start basting the outside with our maple syrup and honey, and then we'll start adding this dry rub. And as I mentioned, we might go in and make another round of this dry rub if this isn't enough to cover the whole ham. Alright, so this is what it looks like when you're done prepping it for cooking. So you'll notice brown sugar is pretty difficult to work with, especially when you have such a sticky rub on it or glaze. So no worries, you don't need to cover 100% of this thing. We are going to gradually baste it over the entire cook anyway. This is really just to kind of introduce it into the actual quality meat, not necessarily the skin. So that, you know, those flavors start early, kind of, you know, curing to the meat, and then once we put it on the grill, it will caramelize. So anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to wrap this up and we're going to let it hang out in the fridge overnight, and then we will begin our cook tomorrow. All right, so it's about 8:30 in the morning. So this is what it looks like after a night of sitting in the fridge, brining. You'll see a lot of that brown sugar is kind of dissolved into the ham, kind of giving it a nice glaze. Now you'll notice I didn't do anything with the skin. It's peeled back enough off the top end. It is about halfway up on the back end. You could choose to remove it. You could choose to cut slices into it just to kind of let the fat render out. I'm actually just going to let it cook in just to hold in a lot of that moisture, and then we'll peel it off after it's done. So while that's going, you'll notice I have some apple wood chips here soaking. We need at least 30 minutes on those before those go on the fire. And the ham's been out probably for, I want to say about 45 minutes. I'm trying to get it out at least an hour before the cook time, just to kind of let it hang out, get to room temperature a little bit closer at least. As far as the fire on the big green egg, we're going to take out the fire ring. We're going to put a heavy amount of coals on, mostly large chunks, and then we're going to get a strong fire going, and then we're going to add the apple wood chips, and then after that we're going to add the plate setter directly on the coals, and then we're going to add a drip pan with apple juice, and we're going to put the grate on top of all of that, and then put this in a V-rack on top of that grate. So we're going to get started with the grill, and we'll put this thing on in about a half hour to an hour. Trying to do a low and slow and it's raining on your grilling day? Well, today's tip of the day is to actually use a vent cover. You can find these at about $7.50 to $8 at Home Depot. They're just aluminum and they're excellent for keeping the rain out but still letting a good amount of smoke ventilation out. It won't affect your temperature too much. So we highly recommend this as a cheap alternative for making sure that your egg can last through any type of weather. Alright, as this meat continues to cook, we're hitting about an hour and a half of cook time so far. What I like to do is about every 2 hours with this recipe, I like to kind of open the grill up, check on it, and baste it. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to make our baste. It's going to be about 3 parts maple syrup, so we'll go ahead and just add that. So just a good healthy amount. A little bit of this baste is going to go a long way, so you don't really need to go overboard with the whole thing. So we use probably a quarter to a third of this container in here. That should be good. Then we're going to come in and add about 1 part honey. Should be good. Then we're going to introduce some of our spices from our rub earlier. So we're going to do a little bit of ground cinnamon. It's good enough. We're going to add some nutmeg. Healthy amount to cut that spice from the cinnamon. And then we're going to add our allspice to round it out. So you're going to get your basting brush. You're just going to kind of mix it all in there, introduce all those flavors. The spices will kind of powder up in there, but the more you mix it, the more congealed it'll become. It'll turn from a dark brown to kind of a rich light brown. Give it a good stir. You'll notice it's really, really thick, so it'll hold onto that meat real well. So that's about as good as we're going to get it. So like I said, about every 2 hours we're going to check on the meat and give it a baste just on the top. You don't need to flip it. Just to kind of continue to add to that caramelized crust. But you'll see, That's our baste, and we'll be ready to put this on the ham very soon. Alright, we're at about 2 hours, 10 minutes. It's right at 200, so we're good to go. To check on it real quick, so what we're going to do is we're going to actually first remove this this vent cover. You have to be careful with this because it will be hot. And again, the reason why we have this on here is because it is raining right now, so I wanted to try to keep it dry. So we're going to let this thing burp and take a peek at what we got here. Alright, so you'll see it's caramelized, it's starting to brown. It looks magnificent, actually. You'll see the heat's actually making the lens fog up. Looks like we're good on apple juice. We'll add a little bit more, and we're going to do our first round of glaze and then cover this thing back up. Alright, so it's been a total cook time of about 9 hours. You'll see that the outside is caramelized with a lot of that brown sugar and maple syrup. Skin is turned to dark brown. This thing should be good to go. You can't slice ham immediately after it's done, so we're actually going to wrap it up with foil just to keep it warm, and then after about 20 minutes it should slice evenly. Alright, so here's the final product. You'll see it's kind of a pinkish gray hue. It tastes a little bit like a mix between some roast and ham. So we're going to try a little piece. Super moist, really smoky, and delicious. Enjoy.